Okay, good. So, welcome everyone. Welcome to tonight's session. And so tonight we begin with the final happiness for learning mini workshop, which is about your personal circumstances and happiness. Before I continue, would there be any questions or issues you might raise? Or is it possible for us to just kind of delay or postpone any questions you might have? We'll do it during the drop-in session. So we can then talk about your personal circumstances and happiness. So why don't we just begin there? Okay, now, I think all of you will agree with me that the personal circumstances we're in greatly affects our happiness. Would you agree with that? You know, your personal circumstances matter a lot to your happiness. So in other words, if you've just gotten married, you've just entered into a relationship, you've just won the lottery, but if you have a good job, you get a high distinction in one of your lowest units, then, based on those personal circumstances, you're going to be happy. And on the other hand, we would think that if your personal circumstances are not too good, perhaps, there's a death in the family, somebody's seriously sick, you've just lost your job, you've just divorced, and, just had a divorce, you just broke up with a romantic partner of several years. These things suck and they affect your happiness. Would you agree that, that's the way things are? Would you agree? Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Kindly just say something. If you don't want to use the mic, say something in the chat box there. Very good. Okay. Now, so tonight, what we're going to look at is, the role of personal circumstances and happiness. In other words, the bigger question to us is, are people who are in what we might consider to be favorable or great personal circumstances, are they necessarily happy? And those whose personal circumstances suck, are they necessarily unhappy? So did you get the question there? So does it mean that, things are good in terms of your circumstances, therefore, you're likely to be happy? And if your personal circumstances are bad, therefore, you're unlikely to be happy. And that's the kind of question we're trying to examine tonight. And so at this session, you will critically reflect on the impact of your personal situation and happiness and what you can do about your personal situation to improve your level of happiness. So that's the thrust of tonight's session. Now, there have been studies, a lot of studies about happiness, and one of them is actually one of those studies, or several studies, were actually done by a team by Sonia. I don't know how to pronounce her name. Lyubomirsky. She's probably from Western Europe, and she has a book, The How of Happiness. And what I'd like to ask you is this: according to her, there are three key factors that impact happiness or have an effect on the happiness of individuals. One is personality. The other one would be personal circumstances. And the third would be intentional activities that you do on purpose or deliberately. Now, can I just ask you to do something for me? Given, these three factors, if you were to allocate out of 100%, how important would each of these factors be to your level of happiness? So what you do is one, which would mean, you could write personality equals 20%, personal circumstances is 80%. No, the maths would be wrong. So 20% maybe for personality, personal circumstances, maybe 70%, intentional activities, 10%, and that type of thing. Can I just get you to do that? Okay. So thinking about your own personal circumstances or thinking about your own life, if you were to evaluate what would account for happiness in your life, or maybe even the lives of people you know, and there are three factors which the studies tell us are factors which are crucial to happiness, and these are personality, personal circumstances, and intentional activities. What do you suppose would be the weight of each of these factors towards happiness? So for Monique, one, personality would be 30, personal circumstances would be 30, and intentional activities would be 40. Okay, very good. From Louise, 30% for personality, personal circumstances, 50%, intentional activities, 20%. Very good. Can I get from the others? This isn't this isn't a trick question. I'm just trying to get a sense of what you think the figures are. So from Peter, 40% for personality, personal circumstances would be 50, and intentional activities would be 10. From Ash, 25% for personality, personal circumstances would be 50, intentional activities would be 25%. How about the others? Can I just get a sense of what you think? Ilonka, what do you think? Kayla?
Sorry, Manjo, I would say that,
Yeah?
what was the third one? Everybody scores that very low. I would say that's about 80%, and then personality and personal circumstances should be 10 and 10, I think.
So to you, the most important thing would be intentional activities. Was that what you were saying?
Yes.
Okay. So at least, you're kind of the one who's the outlier. You're different from the rest. Okay. Kayla, what do you think? Who else hasn't said anything there? Okay. So probably some are having problems, putting in their answers in the chat box. That's fine. So what is interesting, and this is the bad news first, okay? So let me speak of the bad news. According to studies, and when we speak of studies, we're talking of on average, okay? So on average, according to studies, and this is the bad news. The bad news is that much of our happiness is actually accounted for by personality. So it is our personality which accounts a lot. 50% of our propensity for happiness can be accounted for by our personality. And because personality is meant to be a set of long-lasting, kind of more permanent attributes, they're difficult to change. And so as a result, we're stuck with our personality. And in a sense, the bad news is, it's actually personality which counts the most. So whether or not the person has happiness can be largely predicted by the personality of the person. For example, personality can be about being outgoing, it could be about being positive, optimistic, and so on, as opposed to somebody who's probably a loner, and so on. So there is a set point. Now, so the next question you probably ask is, what is the relative weight for the other 50% between personal circumstances and intentional activities? If we look at your answers in the chat box, I think the majority, or except for Ilonka, I think suggested it, the great majority has suggested that it is personal circumstances which matter a lot. And that seems to be intuitively correct, right? If your circumstances are bad, you'll probably be unhappy. If your circumstances are fantastic, you're likely to be happy. But the evidence tells us that actually personal circumstances only account for 10% of happiness. Let me repeat that. According to research after research, personal circumstances account only for 10% for levels of happiness. In other words, somebody who has won the lotto, somebody who has just gotten a fantastic job, somebody who's just gotten a promotion, somebody who's just been married, somebody who's just entered into a romantic relationship. After a while, that person goes back greatly to the level of happiness prior to that good event. And again, a lot of it is accounted for by personality. I don't know if you've noticed that. And part of it is because of adaptation. We adapt. So in other words, even if you've won the lotto, after a while, the excitement about winning the lotto, the excitement about having a new romantic partner wanes. It fades. Is that true for relationships? That's according to studies. Now, the crucial point, therefore, is that personal circumstances, according to study after study, only accounts for 10%, which means, therefore, and according to the study, it is actually the intentional activities, the things that you intentionally do, that matter more than the personal circumstances. So in other words, one of the things we talked about the last time was paying attention to what is good in your life, mainly because what you pay attention to will actually determine your level of happiness, among others. You know, doing activities like meditation, doing activities like exercise, doing activities like going out with friends, these intentional activities, or even, you know, having close relationships with family members and friends, these intentional activities actually account more for your levels of happiness than personal circumstances. Okay, so I hope, you know, that was helpful. And so we'll leave it there. I'm going to end the recording at this point just for the purpose of, you know, being able to split the two sessions we're having.